What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Filsinger Games Character Spotlight with Mike and Brock.
I am Mike.
And I'm Brock. And today we are talking about the second and third real-life pro wrestlers to be entered into the game. King Kong Bundy. Whoops, that's Greg Valentine. Greg the Hammer Valentine and King Kong Bundy.
Yep. Two very different personalities. Behind the scenes wise, but both very knowledgeable about wrestling. Both great guys to talk to.
Mm-hmm. I've had the pleasure of meeting both of these gentlemen.
I have this Valentine card.
Nice. That's my favorite Valentine card.
And I got him to sign it. I spent a night just hanging out with him, just me and him just chatting away. And I'm like, hey, I got this card. And the other one, my King Kong Bundy, but I also have this one signed.
There you go. Look where he signed it. That's so it's like it was designed for that, you know. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, you're not going to get any more of these signatures.
No, unfortunately, King Kong Bundy is no longer with us.
That's why this one is in. It is laminated.
Protected.
Yep.
I have a signed King Kong Bundy item. It's a photo from WrestleMania 2 where he's standing on Hulk Hogan in the cage. Because I was the first ever person to place an order on the Filsinger Games webpage.
There you go.
Yep. So that was included with my order.
So yeah, I can tell you that, you know, how both these guys got into the game. Since you know, some people may have heard the story, some not, but I can run down. We'll talk about Greg first.
Okay.
So I was wrestling a show in Brantford, Ontario, and I know Tom. Growing up, his favorite wrestler was Johnny Valentine, and so I told him, I'm like, hey, I'm wrestling with Greg the Hammer. I said, do you want to come up? I said, I can set you up with a table so you can sell the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I can get you to meet Greg Valentine. And Tom's like, yeah, I'm coming up. And he brought Alex. Now, that show was one of the greatest independent shows I've ever been on. The crowd was insane. I wrestled a guy named Jimmy Sweetbody.
Ooh.
Who his gimmick was a pro golfer.
Nice.
And he was one of our mid-card guys. But in real life, he had gotten hurt. He had a neck injury. And so I told him, I'm like, my finisher is a hangman. And he took it, and when I put it in it, he screamed. Like, not just oh, I give, but like blood-curdling screams. Because the fans knew he was coming back from a neck injury.
Yeah, yeah.
And he told me he was going to sell it like it's never been sold. And I swung him. The referee stopped the match because of his screaming. And we had fans waiting for him because they thought he was, that bad. Guys came out to help him.
Mm-hmm.
But Tom come up to me and he goes, I asked Greg if he'd want to be in the game. He goes, because I had introduced him before.
And
he goes, I asked, Greg if he'd want to be in the game. And he said, sure, why not? And he goes, Tom said, and I'm going to make a card for you as well.
Nice.
And so I made it in the game first before Greg. So technically I was the first wrestler to be put into the game. And Greg, who I've met countless times on indie shows and such, got to know him pretty good. And I've spent a lot of time just chatting. He's told me stories that are, don't pass along stories.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And some are just funny. He's very, very old school. Like, he does not believe men and women. He doesn't even like women wrestling.
He got himself in hot water for that at Galacticon in 2015.
Yeah.
He was on, was it Wiggy's podcast?
He was on Wiggy's podcast.
And it made national news.
And it was funny because I saw him a month later in Hamilton on another show. And I go up to him, I'm like, hey, Greg. He's like, Mike, how's it going? And I'm like, buddy, gotta ask you. I said, do you know how podcasts work? And he just laughed. He's like, no, I didn't.
He's funny. He always tells it like it is, though. He's one of the better interviews.
Yeah, he's got a great interview that's on YouTube. I've seen it, and he's in a hotel room, and he's in like I think a turtleneck and a suit jacket, gold chain. That is a great interview if you want to see.
I think I saw that one. What's cool about him is he never really buries anybody.
Nope.
He always finds something good to say about everybody, which is pretty cool because a lot of those guys take that opportunity to just air dirty laundry.
Yeah. And here's something you may not know about Greg. Greg Valentine is the reason the Nasty Boys made it to the WWF.
Oh, yeah?
Because I guess Greg and I think it's the blonde one, Brian Knobs.
Okay.
That's his brother-in-law.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And so Greg, they were trying to get into WWF from AWA.
Mm-hmm.
And McMahon already had enough AWA, talent flooding.
Mm-hmm.
And Greg put in a bunch of good words for him and vouched for him.
Cool.
So that's how they got in.
We need to get the Nasty Boys into the game. Maybe a fun one to include.
And
I don't want to start sounding like a Legends player, though, not being happy with what we got.
Nothing upsets the Legends team more than who we do need.
We need the Nasty Boys.
You got Randy Savage and Inoki. Suck it up.
But you don't have Brian Knobs or Jerry Sachs.
But Greg, for me, his debut, it was funny because Tom asked me, he had the choice to bring Valentine or Bundy to the GWF convention.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, Mike, who should I bring?
That would have been Galacticon 8, I believe. 8 or 9.
And I'm like, bring Bundy. He's like, why Bundy? I'm like, because he plays the game.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a fan of the game. I said, Greg has never played it. Greg probably couldn't tell you anything about the game other than, he knows he's in a game. And he picked Greg Valentine because, he's a Johnny Valentine mark.
Mm-hmm.
And Greg didn't show, and the rest is, GWF lore.
He's made good on it, though.
Yeah, no, he did. He turned out to be, a good guy.
Mm-hmm. I know my wife really liked talking to him. She thought he was awesome.
I almost brought him to your hotel room.
We had so many people in our room that night.
And then you guys were at a beer, so he would have been upset.
We did run out of beer. That was my fault, though.
Yeah, like I said, I've hung out with Greg on a bunch of occasions, and he's always been a great guy. Mm-hmm. And his card, if I look at his card on the back, it's a good card. He's probably not going to win your world title.
He could contend for it, though. At least the GWF version of his card, which I have here, no headshot on the back, is how you differentiate quickly.
Yeah.
He's got a pin of 7-4, which is kind of high, but he only has one down on his card with a leave.
Yeah. His color version is a 6-3.
Okay.
With one down.
Cool. 2 straight through moves at level 3 on level 2. His level 3 is pretty solid. +2 finisher on the figure 4 on the Champions of the Galaxy card. But yeah, I mean the power creep him. I think you could justify a -3 power for him. What does he have on that version?
I have a -1 here.
Like this one has a -2.
Yeah, -2 is probably good for him. He was never overly strong.
Mm-hmm. Just a thick guy.
Yeah. On this card, I'd get rid of the down on level 2.
This one doesn't have that.
He's got it down on level 2 defense. That's how I'd power creep the hammer.
Yeah, he's pretty solid as is.
And it's funny because when he was wrestling on the indie shows with me, he wasn't allowed to use the figure 4.
Why?
Because he was under contract with WCW as a part-time wrestler.
Oh.
And only Ric Flair was allowed to use the figure 4 as a finisher. So he had to use the hammer, the big elbow.
Okay.
So what he did is he teased the figure 4. He goes up, he's wrestling our heavyweight champion in a non-title matchup. Named Jamie Jackson. He goes up and he signals for the figure 4, and the crowd leaves their feet because this is what they want to see. And well, he can use the figure 4, but he can't get a win by it.
Okay.
He's not allowed to get a win from the figure 4. And so he goes to the figure 4 and he bends over to, hook the leg, and Jamie punches him in the head and breaks it. And the fans are like, you just broke Greg Valentine's figure 4. Like they were in shock. And then, he signals for it again. He goes to spin, and Jamie kicks him in the ass and sends him off the ropes. Again, the fans are like, and Greg devises. So they're like, he's teasing the fans more and more. And then the third time he signals the figure 4 and he puts it on, and you could probably hear the crowd down the street. It was that loud.
That's great. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he worked that crowd perfect. He knew they wanted to see the figure 4.
Yeah.
And then it's funny because Jamie goes over, he reaches over, and he grabs the ropes and breaks the hold. The fans are like, "What? This no name has now broken the figure 4." And then he does the big, the wind up elbow and gets the win.
He has that on level 2 here.
Yeah, but that's why he couldn't use the figure 4 for a finisher back then.
Wow. I'm pretty sure he used it before Flair did too.
Yeah. But now we can switch over to KKB.
King Kong Bundy.
Mr. Chris Pallies.
He has a pretty awesome mechanic that I wish we would have mentioned last week on our show. The Avalanche +4. You have to roll pin twice because he demands a 5 count, which I think is awesome.
Yep. And how Bundy got into the game. I was working with Bundy on an RWA show. And I think this is even before Greg joined.
Okay.
And so usually the rule of the locker room is you don't talk to the big name wrestlers. You don't mark out for them.
Right.
And so I'm with one of my buddies, Colin Douglas, and we're talking about we're in a Pursue the Pennant baseball league, which is another dice game, kind of like Stratomatic but more advanced. And Bundy hears us talking baseball. He's like, "Hey, what are you guys talking about baseball?" Turns out he's a huge baseball fan. And I said, "Yeah." I said, "We're in a baseball league called Pursue the Pennant." He's like, "Is that anything like Stratomatic? Because I play that a lot." He goes, "I take it with me everywhere I go, the Stratomatic baseball." He goes, "I don't go drinking with the guys." He goes, "I just go back to my hotel room and play this." And he goes, "It saves me money." I'm like, and I explained it. He goes, "You play any other dice games?"
Oh, yes, we do.
And I went, "Well, let me tell you about," I said, you're familiar with PWI. And I said, "There's a wrestling game in there." He goes, "Oh, with the ads." And he goes, "It's kind of science fiction-y." And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Is it any good?" I'm like, "I love it." I said, I still play it every so often. I'll break it out and play. I said, and he goes, "Do you know, how do I get a hold of one?" I said, "Well, actually," I said, "I know the owner." And he goes, and Tim Dalton comes over because Tim was I got Tim a job as our ring announcer. He goes, "Hey," he goes, you think if I signed, give you my address and, signed a photo for Tom, that he'd send me a free set so I could test it out. I'm like, oh yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that would happen.
Yeah.
And he sent it to Bundy, and he played the game a lot. He was a fan of the game.
Nice.
And it was funny. Mark Ashby, Bundy was doing a phone interview with fans.
Mm-hmm.
So Mark Ashby called him up and said, "Hey, I hear you play Champions of the Galaxy." And Bundy lost his mind. He was like, "Kid, you got your finger on the pulse of the business." He goes, "How do you even know that?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, one of my wrestling buddies up in Canada introduced me to the game, and I'm like, "Hey, I got recognized by Bundy." And but yeah, he was a very nice guy. He was like, don't call me Bundy. He goes, "Just call me Chris."
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me a few good few words of advice. One of the ones was, because you're not supposed to mark out for the big name wrestlers. And I was on a show one time. There's Bundy and Valentine and Tito Santana, all these big guys. We're in the back and we're not saying anything because and he's going around getting autographs. And he got autographs from Tito. He goes, sign it to the toughest man who I never beat.
Nice.
And he's just getting all these guys to and he goes, I'm going to want memories.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, oh, okay. So years later, I started, doing stuff like that, posing for a picture. Now it's commonplace, but back then it was
right.
kind of taboo. You didn't do it. But Bundy broke that mold for me. And he invited me to his place, and he goes, "If you're ever in Jersey," he goes, "here's my address." And I remember because I'm like, "Cambridge Street?" He goes, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, I live in Cambridge. I'm going to remember that."
Nice.
And then I was disappointed when I heard he had passed away. He had moved to Florida, for health reasons, and he couldn't do the cold anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But he was a very nice guy.
Yeah, I met him once on a show that you were on. I forget where it was, though.
That would have been in Burlington.
Okay. Yeah. He was super cool. Super cool.
Yeah, it was funny because he was taking on the Shaw Corporation on one of the shows. And I'm talking to him about baseball. And he goes, his music starts playing, and there was a big trade that just happened. I was telling him, he's like, "Come on to the ring with me." I'm like, I can't do that. He's like, "What are they going to do? Fire you?" He goes, "I'm telling them." He goes, "You're the hitman." He goes, I hire you to watch my back."
Perfect.
I'm like, you're going there with 5 guys who are pretty green. That's going to throw them way off. I'll just hang back. Like, "Oh, fine, kid." And then there's the infamous King Kong Bundy pick of me, Bundy, and Tim Dalton.
Okay.
And we posed, and I've shown this pic to a few people, and I think I've even posted on the GWF boards a couple times. And Chad Olson had me do what's called a Bundy pick now. So I stood up to Bundy, and Bundy's about 6'1" in real life.
His card says he's 6'4".
Yeah, he is not 6'4". In real life, he's maybe 6 foot.
Mm-hmm.
So I stood up for the picture, and he looked and he goes, "Jesus Christ, you're a big kid." He goes, "There's no way I'm having some greenhorn, outshine me in a picture." So he puts his arm around me and then just does this. And literally forces me down. So there's a picture of, I'm the same height as Tim Dalton. Maybe 5'10".
Yeah.
Bundy's just a little bit taller than Tim, and I'm the height of Tim.
Nice.
And so the picture's taken from our waist up so they don't see me bent at the knees.
Uh-huh. That's funny.
So yeah, he had a great sense of humor. And I went to a wings eating. What this promotion did was super smart. A wings place bought the show.
Okay.
on the condition that Bundy came back to the show and we'd announce it, and he'd have an eating contest versus fans. So everybody ordered a pound at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a big, square circle, and Bundy's at the head of the table. And as you dropped out, people moved up the line. So you can get to the head table with Bundy. And I tapped out after like 50 wings. And I'm like, I got to go home. I had the meat sweats.
Yeah.
But Bundy and a guy named One Man Wrecker were going at it. And I heard they were in the 70 and 80 wing match. and Wrecker was, probably about 6 feet tall and about 420 pounds. So they're both, there's a lot
about
of
the same
mass.
size. Yeah.
But Bundy was big but didn't jiggle.
Yeah. Yeah. He's another just solid guy.
Yeah. But his card, if we look at it,
Mm-hmm.
If I would power creep one thing, I'd get rid of I'd move the choice D or G on level 3 up 1 so you can keep it down.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's pretty. His level 3 offense is pretty bad other than his finisher.
Yeah.
And he has a C death jump too.
Like they have him doing a death jump, and I'm like, that's never going to happen.
That's not a choice. It has to be on there, I think, then. Yeah. They've changed that since, but yeah, that's the obvious one there. I might turn one of those hurts to a dazed on level 2 defense.
Yeah, that could work. Yeah, -4 power. He was a strong guy.
Mm-hmm.
+4 finisher.
But you had to roll your pin twice.
Yep. I did use this card in one of my I've restarted my legend like 3 times. And I said, next time I do it, it sticks. But I had Bundy and Jimmy Snuka team up as a tag team. And they won the tag titles.
That's a cool team. One thing that they did with Bundy that I wish they would have done with more real-life wrestlers is they made a sci-fi version of him called Avalanche, who was a member of the Rocket Men. He was actually a clone of the real King Kong Bundy 100 years in the future.
I plan on using him. I got that card. I don't know how much different it is.
They made him a little bit bigger, but doing a side-by-side here, I think the Bundy card's a little bit stronger. Yeah, but the Avalanche has an add 1 move. So yeah, they're pretty comparable. Yeah, it looks like Bundy has a little bit better defense, and then Avalanche has a little bit better offense.
Okay.
Just slightly better, though.
That's our first foray into doing some real-life wrestlers.
Mm-hmm.
So we picked these 2 because, they started off in the game, but it's also 2 because I've literally worked with probably about 50 to 100 pros, big-name guys. And these 2 were the first, but some of the ones where I can share stories and talk about.
Yeah, it's always good.
And people, I know people like to hear. People always like to hear the stories about guys, the good, the bad.
Right.
The first time I met Valentine, one of the riders he actually asked for was a 26er of rye. He's the only wrestler I know that had a rider. I need a 26er of rye, or I'm not even showing up at the arena. We drank half before, half after.
There you go. I think that's pretty common nowadays, though, for the bigger names.
To have riders?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, I've
Now,
heard. I can't even think of anything off the top of my head, but
I haven't wrestled on a card in 3 years.
uh-huh.
But most of them, it's just to be well taken care of. They get their own hotel room, flights.
Yeah, travel taken care of, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I had the pleasure of meeting both of these gentlemen, and they were both good to me. So
Yeah, and his robe, I was wearing his robe after one show. That thing weighed about 40 pounds. So heavy.
How many sequins do you think were on there?
You
had to guess.
It was the black. Okay, it was the black robe that he always wore with the silver sequins.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say there was probably 30,000.
Somebody sewed those on there one by one. Wow.
I wonder why they cost $5 to $10 grand.
Yep. Just in the labor.
Yeah.
And raw materials. That's cool though.
It is. I liked it. I know there's a beefcake card.
Mm-hmm.
And I've chatted with Valentine about beefcake. He's told me some stories. He was never his biggest fan, but he knows that, when people want them, they want them as a tag team.
Yeah.
So
dream team, baby.
They kind of gotta hang out.
Yeah.
I do have a signed Luscious Johnny V poster.
I have one of those as well.
He gave it to me one year he was in Galacticon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, hey, technically you do have all three of the Dream Team.
Uh-huh. Yeah. They did them in Promoter Prime, I think, last year. As one of the quarters. They were the 3 cards.
Oh.
And they had tag team mechanics and stuff.
Yeah, the stories you were telling me when they fought the Bulldogs. He said it was just funny. He said the Bulldogs used to take advantage of Beefcake because he wasn't tough in real life.
Uh-huh.
So Dynamite and Davey Boy just used to beat the hell out of him in the ring.
Didn't Dynamite do that to everybody though?
Yeah, Dynamite was a bit of a jerk, but Greg said Dynamite never had an issue with him. Like he wasn't stiff with him or trying to do anything because Dynamite, if you were a legit tough guy, Dynamite respected you.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't try to pull crap on you.
Yeah. Classic bully. Won't only dish it out when he knows he's not going to get it back.
Yeah. All 5'6" of them.
Yeah.
I wouldn't screw him. I wouldn't screw him ever.
No.
But yeah, he definitely had some bullying with him.
Yeah, I think the story is he broke Mick Foley's jaw because Foley said that he was a big fan of his before the match or something like that.
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, he dislocated his jaw, hit him with a stiff clothesline, and Foley said he knew it was up too because he was in the ring. His tag partner was a British guy.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember who it was.
I don't remember
Nelson
either.
Boyle or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And he started off the match and then tagged into Mick, and then it was just all over.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of glad that stuff doesn't happen as much anymore.
No. When I started wrestling, you know, stuff happened in the ring, so you had to be, know how to protect yourself.
Right.
But as time went on, less and less happened.
Mm-hmm.
And the wrestlers became less and less physically able to defend themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
And a couple of years ago, there was a bigger wrestler, and he just took advantage of some rookies and just, beat them up in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked me, they're like, can you show us some stuff? And I'm like, I don't want to show guys stuff anymore because it's the mentality behind it. If I show it to you, okay, yeah, you now know how to, physically do stuff to guys. I know a lot of sugar holds and legit holds.
Mm-hmm.
not just to tie you up and like, yeah, you can't get out.
Mm-hmm.
But are you now going to take that knowledge and,
Use it for evil.
yeah. So I think it's good that it's gone.
Yeah.
Kind of aside, but then you get guys that, when they fight, it becomes hysterical because they don't know how to fight.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Good stuff.
I've seen it, but.
So yeah, that was King Kong Bundy and Greg the Hammer Valentine.
Our first two legends.
Mm-hmm.
We will do some more legends. We'll just spread it out.
Yeah. We like to do something different here and there, and just change it up a bit.
Yep. Don't always talk about the GWF guys.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you for listening, everybody. If you have not yet clicked our subscribe button, please do that now. We're working toward 100 subscribers. We're trying to hit that number before the end of the year. Please check out all the links below in the description. We have some podcasts, including the official Filsinger Games podcast roll-up, the Legends team's Uncharted Territory, Lee Longpre's Dizzy Dice. Then over on YouTube, we have Grant's solo promoter, Dave Little's Fed, that he plays live, I believe, on Saturday nights, and After Further Review. Also have a couple Twitch channels listed. And then you can find all our social media stuff there as well. And again, if you have any Filsinger Games related content you'd like us to share, please shoot one of us a message or contact us through YouTube, and we'd love to include you in our description as well. Because the more people that know about this game, the more people will have fun with us. And that's what we're all here to do.
We'll see if we can get some of these legend guys following us, like Carl Zila and Jeff Merriman, or Chris Merriman and Jeff Stafford.
Yeah, come on, guys.
We'll tag them in this.
Yeah, there you go. Good stuff. All right, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Good night, Australia.
Good night, Ontario.